What's the significance of this meeting?
I mean, this is a demonstration when the likability of a company sinks so low. Facebook really are facing tremendous amount of pushback of the international market outside of the United States, and those type of changes could have a huge implication to their business model, fundamental business model in the long run.
Now, he's been skipping out on some of these meetings, especially when it comes to the UK. Why did he choose France specifically?
Well, probably they think the French would be more friendlier because there's been so much talk in UK in regulating Facebook even more. And it's not just France and UK, we see in Germany, people thinking about not just data privacy anymore, but it's this whole idea around sharing data should be controlled as well. So what we're seeing is step by step, regulator really changing the paradigm, and we're seeing Facebook is hitting the tipping point.
But he can't do this with every country that wants him to appear in front of them, right? I mean, every country has their own gripe of what Facebook is doing. How will he choose which countries to focus on?
Well, this is the challenge for big tech company. For the longest time, they felt like we can just write one single program and roll out the globe, regardless of the cultural differences, the geopolitics. What we're seeing here is the story is not that simple. Even if you only on a digital pure play, you've got to take into account the local environment, consumer preferences, as well as individual regulator, how they think about this issue going forward. The world is much more complex these days.
In the most recent earnings report that we saw from Google, they had to account for a fine that they incurred from the EU, for Facebook, for the rest of the tech companies that are trying to operate within Europe particularly, and kind of monetizing all of the users that are in that region. How might we see sweeping reform really impact some of their past ways of operations as well?
Right. Now, if you think for a moment, for the longest time, they felt like these penalty or these fine are just cost of doing businesses. So we're just going to pay it up and getting our way and continue business as usual, right? But what we're seeing now is the regulator really step up. No, this is not okay. You cannot just declare yourself as an independent platform. We want you to police your platform whichever way you need to be. Or simply say in Germany, I've heard about some of my executives bring up the story like, well, people are talking, you can no longer share data between WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger. Think about the consequences if these kind of data sharing is no longer viable in Europe, and that would inspire a lot of other countries from Southeast Asia to the Middle East may take a different stand against Facebook going forward.
Right, and what do you think is going to come out of this meeting ultimately? I mean, it was a nice photo opportunity, but I mean, outside of that.
There's probably an initial kind of memorandum of understanding, and things like this is always about, the detail is always where the devil lies. And I think what's interesting is, for the first time, these type of conversations really entering the mainstream. Historically, regulating Facebook is sort of, a social agenda that is not even mainstream, it's not legitimate. For the first time, it's really entering the mainstream dialogue.
I just think it's fascinating that, Facebook allowed French regulators inside of their offices and into their business, right? I mean, that is a level of transparency that they have not afforded, again, to other countries. And other companies, I don't think, have this level of collaboration with governments, right? Is that right?
I mean, Facebook has no choice. If they refuse and continue to act so opaquely, regulator can even demand, you've got to open up the whole algorithm. The algorithm can no longer be opaque. We want to understand how you select news feed. If they are being cornered into that position, the ramification would be even huge.
Do you think with kind of these councils that Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of them are putting framework around where they would have a more regular transparency report that is released or unveiled? Do you think within those types of councils, they will start appointing or requesting, since they're requesting regulation in very selective areas, I might add, that they would also have somebody from the EU, somebody from the United States side, that they are appointing within these councils as well, so that they know where they are clearly in the wrong and in real time, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, if you think for a moment, the sort of idea of having this independent council is nothing more different than having independent auditor, right? But for the longest time, auditor only audit financial result. What you're seeing, policymakers are beginning to pay attention to data privacy, consumer protection, and even algorithm. It doesn't mean that they need to divulge or disclose any proprietary information or trade secret, but it's simply having independent auditor to go through this company to make sure whatever they do are right, transparent, and fair.
Really quickly, Singapore is looking to pass a law where they would actually fine companies like Facebook for fake news, but according to what the government says is fake news. How dangerous is that?
For Facebook itself?
Well, I mean, for free speech, I mean, a lot of free speech advocates believe that this is a form of censorship.
Well, there is partially part of that conversation, but if you think about Southeast Asia, last time when I was in Singapore, because of close proximity to India, because the whole India election is going in full swing, and yet there are so much disinformation, so much fake news going around, and all Facebook doing is putting contractor to do some kind of checking on information. So there's a disjoint between what is needed and what can implement.
Not going away anytime soon.
No.